I was shocked to discover recently that Steven Crowder is a misogynistic bully. Of course, I've never seen or heard anything he's ever done or said throughout his entire career, except for this one video called Managing Marriage in the Public Eye. It's a video he did with Ben Shapiro in which he doles out relationship advice.
Really important thing. If we're going to bitch about feminism, then we need to talk about being real men. And that means, yes, I know it sounds namby-pamby, but meeting your wife's needs, making sure that, and that's not just physically and financially, we're talking about spiritually, emotionally, making sure that they feel heard, that they feel safe.
That is great advice right there. Perfect advice. I agree with this. Your spouse or partner should always feel safe around you. If you're ever alone in a room with your significant other, you should never give them the impression that you're going to murder them, generally speaking.
So it really has been a learning process, and I will say that contrary to some people who we know, my wife's a very strong... Have you ever met my wife?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you've met my wife, yeah. She's a very strong personality. So for us, there was a lot of clashing early on, as opposed to some friends who were both type B personalities, where they never argued, but some of these people just got divorced. I'm like, well, what happened? They'd never gone to marital counseling. They'd never had a fight, and the first fight was the blowout. Whereas my wife and I, the arc...
Whereas Steven Crowder and his wife have built their marriage on a solid foundation of fighting all the time.
It was a lot tougher early on, and it got easier.
Do you think you've both gotten better at marriage, or you've just rounded off each other's edges a little bit?
I think we've both. Now I've been listening to too much DMX. Both.
That was... This guy's funny. This guy's funny. He's wild and unpredictable. You know, he's not wearing pants in this interview. He's not wearing pants at all. He never really explains why. But I know why. See, in the right-wing propaganda universe, everyone makes the same arguments because they all have the exact same beliefs at the exact same time. They're all against no-fault divorces nowadays. This is just one example. And they all make the exact same argument. It makes it easier for people to rip you off, for someone to pretend to love you and then take all your money away. Of course, no-fault divorces are just a different version of a divorce, so it has no effect on outcomes like that. It doesn't negate premarital contracts, for example. But they all make that argument. So it's important for them to distinguish themselves from one another. And so the way they do that is they create characters in the right-wing propaganda universe. So, for example, Ben Shapiro would be the uptight, analytical logic nerd, the Spock. Whereas Steven Crowder, he's the Van Wilder.
We've both gotten better at marriage and communication, for sure. And I think a big part of it is really learning that people inherently are selfish. You know, men struggle with pornography. Men always have. For women, the pornography is a romantic comedy and The Bachelor, right?
For women, romantic comedies are pornography. You and I like romantic comedies. I like the movie You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. This is it was written by Nora Ephron. And what it is Nora Ephron uses the romantic comedy as a kind of metaphor. This is all subtext, by the way. It's a metaphor for the seductive nature of capitalism. It's about how fascism weaponizes the conveniences of capitalism in order to placate the masses. And apparently, Steven Crowder thinks that women whack off to this movie. Romantic comedies are pornography for women. You know what else is pornography for women? Pornography. I've always believed that men were divided into two separate camps. There are those of us who believe that women are as perverse as men. And that there are those of us who fear that women are as perverse as men. And if you watch that security video, Steven Crowder verbally abusing and threatening his wife, what you'll see is an expression of that fear. The need for control is inspired by that fear. You know, speaking of metaphors, I often see Steven Crowder in front of the camera wearing a holster with no gun in it. I was lying before. I know who he is. And that's the perfect metaphor, an empty holster. That's the perfect metaphor for who Steven Crowder is as a man. He carries all the cliches of machismo. You know, the cigar, the muscles, the hair cut to look like a comic book Superman. But that's all just a holster with no gun. Because he's really just an insecure, scared, and spoiled child.